Hello, my name is Justin Bright, and welcome to Kerbal Space Program version 1.2.2, in which I am attempting to make Kerbals a multiplanetary species. And here we have the Geo rover coming back from planting the flags about 26 or so kilometers away, having driven across the hilly landscape of Duna to get back to the Ascent vehicle, which I really hope is going to work. Yeah, we do have one last contract for exploring Duna, where we actually have to return to Kerbin from a flyby, and I think that means we actually have to, somebody has to be recovered on Duna, having gotten all the way down there. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see if that ends up being possible. I'm not 100% sure if I'm actually going to send these Kerbals home. Madbeth, Jai, and Gersey, they may wind up staying out here and meeting up with the new astronauts that are going to be coming out, because I'm pretty sure that in the Starlifter shuttle they'll be able to spend a long time kind of hanging out, hanging out in orbit without having to worry too much about anything, really. They'll be able to have all of the supplies and habitation time that they need to stay in orbit for a good long time, at least long enough to get relief sent out here. And this question is mostly because I am only just now remembering that I think I actually had to spend a little more Delta V than I thought. So we may not actually have enough to get home. So that's one of the things that we are going to be testing once we get to the Starlifter shuttle. But the first thing we have to do is actually get there. So now we are heading back. Ooh, there's Ike hanging high in the sky. That's pretty cool. Let's see. Where's my ladder? There it is on this side. Extend the ladder. Alright, so I'm just going to get these guys inside. Alright, so now we're getting up to the top of the vessel. That's a pretty steep climb, but while we're up here, we need to remember to repack our parachutes, and thankfully Gersey Kerman is capable enough engineer to get that done. Alright, so that's all packed up, and climb on board. Alright, twice more. Alright, one last thing we want to make sure that we do before we go is grab the scientific data, of which we have 56 different scientific experiments that we have run across the surface of Duna and all the various biomes, which will just turn into cash. But in a future series, I will very likely be using the community tech tree. I'll be using the other mods that might give more purpose to science in the late game. We'll see. I don't know exactly what my next series is going to look like, but I imagine it's going to be a little bit more complicated than this one as far as career stuff is going to go. But all right, we now have all the Kerbals on board. The science is safely tucked away. The Geo rover is aligned roughly with the sun. Not really, not quite. Can you actually turn a little bit? There we go. We'll tuck up the ladder a little bit and align it kind of sort of with the sun. It's just going to be sitting here for a very long time. I may drive this back out when we get our the new Kerbals arrive on Duna. They may be like a legacy mission where we pick up this rover. I'm not sure it's going to have a ton of use in the future because we'll have all sorts of other more advanced things, but there you have that. So now yes, so let's take a look at this, and we are going to want to first actually retract everything, because we are going to be punching through the thin but dangerous still atmosphere of Duna. So let's retract these antennas, retract this ladder, which is clickable for sure. There it goes. Shoop. Sneak up into that extra dimensional space where ladders go, apparently. And there we have it. So now we have our 3 Kerbals on board. How are we doing? We have 14 days of habitation, 14 days of supplies. Well, we're starving, but that's fine. We just have to get up into orbit and get to the Starlifter shuttle, and then we'll be fine. So let's take a look at what that's going to look like. Let's see, Starlifter shuttle, I did set that to be roughly equatorial, so this is going to be a difficult trip. I'm not 100% sure exactly how this is going to work for us as far as that's concerned, because it did take us a lot more delta V to get down than I otherwise might have expected. So we're going to be able to get a free inclination change because we can take off going at like a 45-ish degree angle from from east, so we can be heading south and east relative to where we are, and that should put us in a trajectory to meet up with the Starlifter shuttle. My thinking is that we set up that initial trajectory to try to meet up with it on the first pass, and then go ahead and try our best to match velocity when we get down to here. I'm hoping that that will work. I guess we're going to find out. And I think the last ditch, so the plan B is Starlifter shuttle does have some fuel left. And if I absolutely have to, if it means that these 3 Kerbals are going to be careening off into an orbit around Duna that they can't actually get to the Starlifter shuttle and therefore get to safety, I will burn the engines of the Starlifter shuttle and abandon the mission to get home, because we have other options. We have torch drives, we have warp drives. We should be able to figure something else out for that. But this particular mission is bound by chemical engines. So let's save the game one more time. I think I may have done that already, but let's do it again. And it looks like we are in a good place. It's just coming up below us, so I think that now is probably a good time to launch, and then we will see exactly how this meetup goes. All right, our Kerbals are all packed up and ready to go. We have the Geo Rover all set. We are charged and ready. I think we should have enough Delta V to get up into orbit and meet up with the Starlifter shuttle, but I guess we're going to find out. This is, in fact, the first time I have launched from Duna. At least in this save. I've done it before, but it's been so long that I actually cannot remember now that I'm thinking about it. It's actually been quite a while since I've been on the surface of Duna and actually tried to launch anybody off of it. It's a very different challenge than launching off of Kerbin, so hopefully I remember. Hopefully my numbers are correct, because they very well could be wrong. So we have 1400 meters per second of Delta V. I think I'm actually going to keep this Poodle stage with me for the very brief little kick that it's going to provide. I don't mind that smashing on the ground a little tiny bit. Or should I keep that for... No, that's not actually worth anything. We'll let that smash on the ground. Okay, so I think we're all set to go. We have saved the game. Our Kerbals are packed up. We have supplies, life support. Everything's ready to go. So 3, 2, 1, launch. And that engine cuts, and here we go. Now we are off and away, getting a little height as that thing smashes off and falls right near the Geo Rover. Hopefully that doesn't do any damage to that. And we are going to actually be turning about 90 degrees as if this was a normal Kerbin launch. However, we are going to be, because we're moving at 90 degrees, that should push us down. So because of where 90 degrees actually is on this nav ball, it should push us down into an orbit that intersects, hopefully at not too crazy of an angle, with the Starlifter shuttle. But we're just going to have to see how that goes. We're actually a little bit tight on our Delta V budget, if I recall, so we are going to be using our RCS as well, as much as we can, to try to give us a little bit of that extra oomph. But now that we've gone up a little bit, let's actually start turning and making a quote-unquote gravity turn. It's not really a gravity turn, but it has kind of the same effect as we're trying to turn so that we can start adding horizontal velocity instead of just vertical, because that vertical doesn't do us any good whatsoever. Yeah, so our Delta V budget is, or not budget, but our Delta V amount is dropping precipitously, so I'm becoming concerned. This is what I was worried about when I was launching, that we didn't quite have as much fuel as I seemed to have originally thought when I planned this mission. So we're gonna do what we can to get up into a safe orbit, but it's gonna be... This looks like it's gonna be a little bit dicier than I wanted it. I'm not 100% sure we're even gonna be able to meet up with the Starlifter shuttle at this rate. I did mention that it was possible that we were gonna have to do some kind of last-ditch Starlifter shuttle maneuver to meet up with this so that these Kerbals don't wind up, you know, starving to death in this little capsule as we wait for further rescue. But yeah, it looks like this is going to be really tight. We are so close to orbital velocity, but our delta V remaining is just dropping, and we just have so little fuel left. Where is the edge of the atmosphere here? Oh, there we go. We just hit it. Just hit it. Don't go any further. All right, how much do we need? And our periapsis, 110 more meters per second, so we are actually okay as far as that's concerned. So let's get into orbit, and then we can worry about getting ourselves into a more favorable position to be picked up. But we do have plenty of monopropellant, if nothing else, so I can burn some of that, even if we will be leaving a good amount, a healthy amount for when we are going to be doing our rendezvous maneuver. Alright, so we have reached orbital altitude, so let's go ahead and plan our circularization burn. At our apoapsis, we're going to circularize, and also we're going to, well, there's not too much point in changing the inclination of our orbit at this point, although we can bring it down just a tad. We have 190 meters per second to play with, so we can do that, and that is helpful-ish, sort of, kind of. It should at least give us a little bit more. It'll be a little bit closer and cost a little bit less for the Starlifter shuttle, because that's a less inclined orbit. So we'll do that, and that's about as good as we're going to be able to do at this point, I think, which is pretty unfortunate. This was another failure in planning on my part, because this would have been not a big deal at all if there had been no inclination change. Once again, the inclination change is the thing that bit me, because I did not actually plan for it. When I was originally designing this mission, I did not realize that I would need to find a, I would be doing, well, I thought that this might be something that we would use to find a particular location. However, I did not expect to, where's my periapsis? Okay, so we're fine there. I did not expect to go to such an inclined near polar location. I thought that we would be within a couple degrees of equatorial, and in a very silly fashion, I put the Starlifter shuttle in a perfectly equatorial orbit around Duna, which was a huge mistake. I really don't know why I did that. If I had put it in any kind of inclined orbit, I could have eventually synced up with this. Like, it would have had places where it was closer to the Starlifter shuttle, and I could have launched then, but with the way things are now, this is just kind of how it is. So there we go. We have 7 meters per second left of delta V, and now it's just up to the Starlifter shuttle to come rescue us. Alright, so we have figured out a decent-ish trajectory that is going to be a very simple thing. We're just going to wait about a day and a half, almost 2 days, and just a very small burn is going to bring our orbit, the orbit of the Starlifter shuttle down to meet up with the errant Duna Ascent vehicle in its highly inclined orbit. It is then going to have a relative speed of 561 meters per second at a separation of 2 kilometers, which is not so bad. We can then put the Starlifter shuttle into that same wacky orbit and match the speed. The relative speed is going to be 561 meters per second, which means that if we just burn that much, we will be in that orbit and be able to catch up with the Duna Ascent vehicle. At that point, there is no hope, I think, of being able to send the Starlifter shuttle home unless I send them on an incredibly efficient, incredibly slow home-in trajectory with no hope of actually capturing. Well, let me put it this way. If I wanted to capture without using any more fuel, I would probably have to aerobrake, and I am almost entirely certain that this thing would break apart if I tried. So yeah, this may end up having to just kind of stick around. They have indefinite hab and home time because I think there's upwards of 50 years worth of habitation that they have on this particular vessel. They have supplies for several years as well, so I think the answer is that we are going to just hook up, and then they're just going to sit here in orbit and be, I guess, the station for the space station, I guess, that people can come visit on the way down to the colonies, because it'll be in an orbit that is something that actually crosses over the landing site, at least occasionally. Although, no, I have turned a little bit, but yeah, maybe I can actually turn the Starlifter shuttle a little bit more normal, change the inclination so that it flies over the landing site, and then this can just be something that stays in that orbit at all times and is kind of a gateway station. Or maybe when I refuel this thing, maybe it can be like a gateway station, and then we can figure out something to do with it in the future. Not sure what we would do with it, but that's an option anyways. So let's get to this burn. So we have to wait a day and 4 hours. All right, so we are just counting down the last couple of seconds till we have our transfer burn that is going to take us into an orbit that intersects with the Duna Ascent vehicle. Using the ascending and descending nodes to match these kind of positions is just the best way to meet up with something in such a wildly different orbit. Wildly different inclination, I should say, because this is going to give us it's just the easiest possible way to slide down and hit it at that point, and then we're going to have to the challenge is going to be actually, you know, matching velocity and getting to a point where we can actually turn that into a rendezvous. But as we get a little bit closer, I think we should be able to adjust our trajectory just slightly so that it is a little bit easier to make this. So as we come around, I think at my periapsis, I am going to slow it on down, and we're going to take a little bit of a look at what we can do here. So we want to meet it a little bit further out. I guess probably the easiest thing is just we're going to need to start burning here in a second. So we're going to point ourselves retrograde to the target, and then just try to point ourselves, just kind of slide our targeting reticle here, our retrograde marker. Yes, words. I have the best words. Just point that at the right place so that we can close this gap just a little bit more. There we go. So now our target separation is down to about 500 meters. And we are beginning our burn that is bringing us closer. We can actually stop that and come a little bit closer. There we go. Because we don't want to wait too long, and we don't want to, we both don't want to go too early or too late as we try to match our target velocity as we come in closer and closer. Yeah, look at that. You can see our orbit shifting as we are approaching the target. We are heading towards them in relative terms, pretty much dead on, but our orbits are slowly closing in towards being exactly parallel. Alright, so we still have a good 20 seconds of burn left, and we are 15 seconds away, so we're just going to keep on going. Maybe point this a little bit. Maybe we can get a little bit closer, just a little tiny bit. There, that's probably more than we want. We're at 0.0. We don't want to actually hit it. But yeah, here we go. Now we're actually sliding in at about 14 meters per second. So we can actually cut that down a little bit more. 7.6 meters per second relative velocity, and we are about 650 meters away. So let's time warp in, get a little bit closer, then we can kill our relative velocity. And Madbeth and Jai have returned to duty because they are near the glorious habitation ring. Alright, so let's turn this thing towards our target, and then we can actually switch over and make the docking from here. Let's go ahead and open this shield. Point at the target to get us started. And we are on our way, but we are not actually targeting the right docking port. Yes, there we are, the shielded docking port directly on the front. And there we go, with both SASs pointing at each other, I think we will be just fine as far as this docking. It's just a matter of how long it takes. So let's accelerate a little bit. All right, flipping off the SAS and gliding in for the final bit of docking. Bonk. Come on, magnets. I believe in you. Kerchunk. There we go. So now we have docked safely. So we have rescued the crew, and we are in just a slightly funky orbit, which is fine. It's not ideal by any stretch of the imagination, but they're where they need to be. They will be safe and alive for 26 years, probably less, because the supplies, even though we do have a gigantic tank of fertilizer that is dramatically increasing the length that we get out of our supplies, it will run out eventually, but not, you know, during this series. Like, I don't think I'm going to be running for 20 or 30 years, so I think we are going to be just fine as far as that's concerned. So we will figure out a plan to rescue them a little bit later on when we get the other folks here to the when we get other people up here to meet up, our actual crews that will be colonizing. So the first thing we would like to do before we turn off the lights here is send Jai Kerman. Get out of here. Jai Kerman is going to the science lab. Gersey is headed to the Nomomatic. Delicious. And Madbeth is going to be heading up to the Orca Command Module. Is Merber? Where are you, Merber? You are in the Mobile Processing Lab. Delightful. We have a tremendous amount of research, and this thing is actually already stocked, so we are getting 10 science per day in our research efforts. Not that that actually matters all that terribly much, since we have, you know, completed our science tree. But here we are, floating in orbit. Everybody is here and safe, and that is fantastic. So their mission was also completely successful. We have flags down that mark the location that we will be bringing down our bases. But that is actually all the time I have for this episode. If you enjoyed this one, please share and subscribe, and I will see you next time.